We use apprenticeships to recruit new talent as it helps us to develop our own staff and our own team. Part of the Oasis culture, we've got over 50 schools within the whole of the country. So what we do is we employ apprentices, just giving those staff that chance. As an apprentice, you don't really get the chance, you don't have the experience, you don't have the skills. You do have some qualifications, but the difficulty is someone giving you that chance to get your foot in the door. So using apprentices is a really good example of that, getting them in the door, and then you've got your team in the academy that help them to develop the skills. They get lots of experiences across the whole of the academy, and then you've got LMP that help them with supporting their apprenticeship with their modules. Apprenticeships help to build confidence for our staff because we've got a good support network within our school and also within a wider Oasis Trust. And like I said before, it's giving them that opportunity and that chance to show what they're made of.
Excellent. Hello and welcome everybody to this session. My name is Jamie McVey. I'm joined by my co-host Amber Lawrence, and I'm very happy to announce our guest speaker Sarah Tallack joining us from Arke Schools as well. So this session today is all about how school leaders can use apprenticeships to develop staff and hire new talent, and this is part of our series of webinars for National Apprenticeship Week 2025. It's the first of many that we have planned this week, so we're very, very excited to showcase the power of apprenticeships on this very important week. Before we get started though, I just wanted to introduce you to LMP Group. You might have heard of us before through one of our 3 brands that you can see at the bottom of the screen there, but before we get started, we'll let you know who we are, what we do and how we do it as well. So in terms of who we are 3 companies with a collective mission to inspire ambition. We want to provide opportunities and support social change all over the UK. We do that by focusing on education and social impact, and we work together to bring about that positive and sustainable development through the programs that we do. So we do that through serving schools, trusts, businesses, and also individuals nationwide as well. And all of our companies are very much aligned by our 4 core values, which you can see on the right hand side of the screen there as well. In terms of our main service areas here at LMP, the main one is apprenticeships, of course. That's what we're going to dive into today. And in terms of apprenticeships, we are an award-winning apprenticeship training agency. And in regards to all of our work when it comes to apprenticeships, we are specialists in working with schools to upskill their existing staff and develop those career pathways through funded training as well. We work with some of the leading multi-academy trusts, so Oasis, who you probably saw then in that first video, Ormiston Academies Trust, Arke Schools, who you're going to hear more about today as well, Outward Grange. These are just some of our clients that we work with to create these bespoke training programs as well. Schools that train their staff using the apprenticeship levy, it means it's fully funded through the levy. They do see huge benefits in staff retention, and they can also access a free direct recruitment service for schools, which Amber is going to touch upon later as well. We also run Inspire ATA. Inspire ATA is actually a flexi apprenticeship training agency. And again, that one does specialise in providing schools with support staff for flexible durations. Those minimum durations are 3 months, and Inspire ATA actually employs the apprentice. Then you as a school or a trust will then just host that apprentice rather than having to take them on full time in there as well. We also run adult education budget short course provision. These are for adults that are either employed or unemployed, and these are also fully funded depending on what part of the country you live in, but all applicants must be aged 19 plus for those programs as well. And we also run alternative education provision in schools as well. So that's a little bit about LMP Group. But let's talk now more about why we are here today. So in regards to the apprenticeship landscape, we really want to try and share some good experiences with you in regards to the good work that we see across multi-academy trusts, but also schools all over England. So hopefully today you're going to take some good stuff away from that. You can take that back into your multi-academy trusts and your schools as well. So before we do get started with that though, I think a really good place to start is how apprenticeship funding actually works. So the levy came into play back in 2017, and this does require all employers operating in the UK with a pay bill of £3 million or more to make that investment into apprenticeships. The government then tops that account up with a 10% contribution each month. So you do actually have 24 months in terms of spending that levy pot as well. And then all organisations that pay into the levy, you can access your contribution via your digital apprenticeship service account. So we call it the DAS account. And if you have not yet accessed one of those, then we can certainly help you to do that as well. The levy pot can only be used to pay for apprenticeship training and assessment in England only. So it can't be used for anything else other than apprenticeships as well. But if you've either run out of levy or you're not yet a levy payer, not to worry, because there's a thing called the co-investment model, where the government would actually pay 95% of the training, and then you would pay 5% of that cost as well. So that's everything to do with apprenticeship funding. How does this actually impact schools though? So a lot of schools, a lot of MATs that we work with, actually a lot of levy payers as well, have a levy pot that is underutilised or not utilised. We also know that 22% of levy funds are utilised by schools and MATs, but we also know that this space actually pays £180 million into that pot annually. Okay, but we only utilise 22% of that. There's a massive opportunity there for schools and MATs to actually access those funds. And what we really want to do here at LMP Group is make sure that you are actually accessing those funds so that you don't actually lose out on that valuable training that you actually have access to as well. This also goes for local authority schools. So if you're a local authority school in the audience now, you probably do contribute into the overall authority's local levy pot. And we are actually on most major purchasing systems as well. So things like the Crown Commercial Service, the YPO, schools or MATs can actually buy training services via the levy through those frameworks. But a lot of schools and also MATs actually just use this directly rather than going through that. But that's all to do with your own internal policy on there as well. So we've been working with schools and multi-academy trusts for years, particularly since the introduction of the levy back in 2017. And what I thought would be fantastic to share before I hand over to Amber is really some of the key findings that we have from our clients in terms of why we think all schools should be utilising apprenticeships. Really, that first one, that's all about staff retention. So making sure that you put effective programs in place, because investment in apprenticeship training programs that take 14 months or maybe even more in some circumstances, this is an excellent way to retain staff. It also helps you to enhance your current workforce's skills in there as well. And some of the really good examples that we see is when these programs are actually built into your people strategy, and you have different funded programs throughout the career pathways that you put in place. And there we go, that kind of leads to my next point. So staff development and career pathway planning. So making sure you're identifying your skill gaps and then you're putting in apprenticeship training or funded training along those career pathways as well. And what we all can also do with our curriculum team is we look at the needs that your school or your trust has, look at your culture, your ethos as well. We can actually build those bespoke programs for you. And I really recommend you do that. So it actually feels like your own internal program as well. And then recruitment of support staff as apprentices into schools. We've spoken about two models there already today at the very start. So that direct recruitment offer in terms of taking apprentices into your school as support staff, but you can also host apprentices on that flexi model as well. And this is a fantastic way to attract new talent into your organisation. And you saw in that video at the very start there as well, Oasis, one of our clients, are actually benefiting from taking those apprentices with no experience on and growing their workforce that way. And then improving educational outcomes through the introduction of fresh perspectives and skills. So we know there's a growing need or amount of SEND pupils in mainstream schools right now. But we also know that some staff that might not feel equipped to deal with supporting those SEND pupils. So a lot of our training we put in place, we actually try and have SEND training as a theme throughout that in there as well. But we also have pathways, which Amber's going to touch upon as well shortly. And then creating financial efficiencies through maximising that levy fund. So trying to make sure you don't have any funds that do expire. But then you can save money on the recruitment side of support staff as well. So in some instances, apprentices can be paid less than non-apprentices. Recruitment normally of apprentices can be free through most national providers, certainly for LMP Education, it is. I know Sarah and I, just before, were talking about the NI savings that you can actually see as well by taking on an apprentice or upskilling a member of staff who is aged 25 and below, which again I will touch upon later. And there's also incentives in place if you take on a 16 to 18-year-old. So that's it from me for now. Hopefully the internet will hold out for the rest of the webinar. I'm sure it will, and I'm now going to pass over to Amber.
Thanks, Jamie. What's a webinar without a bit of technical issues? So thank you everyone for joining us. Happy National Apprenticeship Week. Just a reminder, there is a Q&A function. So if you do have any questions throughout, please make sure that you pop them in there. We've got a team of people on the webinar today that can answer any questions that you might have about any of the topics that we go through. So I'm going to talk you through a little bit in terms of what we offer to do with courses in apprenticeships and also the pathways that we offer. So you'll see 3 different topics below. That is teaching and early years, business and professional, and finance apprenticeships. These are the 3 main focus areas that we have in terms of courses, and we have over 20 programs that we currently deliver. And some of those are, slide's going to change. Here we go. Feel very like COVID times then. So yeah, in terms of our course listing, what you'll see is it's very text heavy. So what I'm going to do is talk you through a little bit about what each section means. So within our teaching and early years programs, we have early years practitioner, our teaching assistant pathways. But what you'll also notice is that we have different types of pathways, including SEND and sports, which we'll talk through in more depth in a little bit. We also have our school staff and wellbeing champion, one of our newer programs that came out in September last year. And we also have our higher level teaching assistant, which is one of our commercial programs. This does mean that it is not covered by the apprenticeship levy, and it is a commercial cost. However, what you will see is that we offer level 2 all the way up to level 5 across our various different areas. And what the practical period means is that is the bulk of the learning time that you are on program with LMP. So you'll have various different milestones within an apprenticeship in the given course area, and within those 14 to kind of 17 months, you'll be doing the main body of your learning, where your apprentices will be meeting with their tutor on a monthly basis to have their sessions delivered, and in that time working on various things such as their work and off-the-job training. Following that, there is an endpoint assessment period. So this is the time that's taken for the awarding bodies to collate all of the evidence, to look at portfolios, to have the final kind of exams or professional discussions. And that's where everything gets collated and the apprentice will receive their final grade. So typical durations is obviously including that EPA, but we have to consider things like time within our on programme in terms of what that apprentice works in relation to how many hours they work per week, how many weeks per year they're contracted, if they're term time only. But this is generally the amount of time it tends to take between 16 to 21 months. So what you'll find on the right-hand side of the course listing, this is the funding value of each of our programs. So the pricing is split out and paid to us on a monthly basis through your DAS system, which Jamie mentioned earlier. And then what happens is we hold 20% of that back until they pass their EPA. So the apprentice will obviously be on programme for the duration of the apprenticeship, and then the final 20% will be paid once they complete. Next slide. Thank you very much. So just to highlight one of our programs, and in particular the School Business Manager program, I think when we think about groups of staff within organisations and certainly within multi-academy trusts, is that this is an area where often upskilling and CPD might be neglected, and we all know how hard school business professional or school business managers work. And all of the roles within that role, they're obviously doing finance responsibilities, lots of operational tasks, and obviously they are essential support to senior leadership teams when kind of implementing financial and business decisions. So a programme that is very popular at LMP Education. It takes 19 months to complete with a blended training method, which means that there is some face-to-face and some remote elements to that. And then the practical assessment method is a project presentation. So somebody will be supported if they wanted to go on this programme by one of our tutors who work nationally, and they will be able to get the School Business Professional Level 4 qualification by doing so. Thank you. So to talk you through one of our pathways, our most popular pathways, something that you might not know about LMP Education is that we do hold the largest market share for teaching assistant apprentices within the sector. And we offer from level 3 all the way up to level 5 now with our new specialist teaching assistant apprenticeship. So we obviously offer 3 different pathways within our level 3, and that is the standard teaching assistant apprenticeship, the sports pathway, and the SEND pathway, which is obviously a very hot topic at the moment. We then offer our higher level teaching assistant programme, which obviously we mentioned is a commercial programme, and that also comes with an SEND pathway too. Looking at our level 5, we have 3 pathways within this level 5, which is a wellbeing pathway, an SEND pathway, and a curriculum pathway. So depending on what kind of job role the TA does, whether that's focusing on SEND or focusing on curriculum, whether they're in a secondary education setting, they will have to do the pathway that is suited to what they do most. So how that pathway looks, obviously you can see a timeline on the teaching assistant pathways. So with those pathways, you can go on to level 4 and then on to level 5. However, if you don't want to do the level 4, you don't have to. If you complete a level 3 teaching assistant apprenticeship, you are able to progress on to the level 5. And what you'll see following the level 5 is that the Institute are planning to release a level 6, which is coming out in September this year. And some of you may know that is being piloted with 150 maths teachers, and it's looking likely that it will be around 4 years to complete. So what we are hoping is that we can support somebody from gaining their level 3 all the way up to qualified teacher status. If one of your staff did want to do this qualification, we would look at their maths and English, as they'll need to have a C grade or above to be eligible to go on programme. But we do have a functional skills support team within LMP Education that can support your staff to achieve a functional skills level 2 qualification alongside their apprenticeship. So if they don't have their maths and English, we can do that alongside their programme. We'll look at their prior learning. So if they've done, for example, if somebody wanted to go on to a level 5 straight away, we'll have a look at what previous qualifications they have, how much experience they have within their job role, and just make sure that it is the right person for the right apprenticeship. Once they go through the enrolment process, we'll look at a skills assessment. So we'll look at their kind of current learning and where it's at, and we need to ultimately demonstrate throughout the programme that they have scope for learning. So an additional programme that comes with our teaching assistant qualification is our ANSPEAR product. So ANSPEAR is an app or a web-based programme that is available to all of our teaching assistants, and they are extra CPD programmes that are accredited individually. So when somebody completes an extra programme, they are able to get a certificate at the end of it, which they can put in their CPD portfolio. But also what's fantastic about ANSPEAR is that it can be tailored to that person's job role or particular area of interest. So if you are doing the SEND pathway, we can select those programs for you. So you'll see a couple on the slide now for essential TA programs, advanced TA, but we also look at SEND. So there are lots of different modules that look at behaviour. They look at SEND code of practice, etc. And as a trust, what's really fantastic about this product is that you can bespoke it to your needs. So previously we've looked at with some of our partners, they tied it in with their internal strategy. So they wanted to focus on active reading as part of their English strategy. So we embedded that into all of the TA programme that were within that trust. It's obviously an app based, so when you're looking at covering that off the job learning, there's a lot that can be covered there, and it's tailored for teaching assistants. It's perfect for them to do alongside their role, and obviously gives them that bit more accredited CPD.
Our apprentices are invaluable to the progress of our children. They mean that we're able to facilitate lots of additional intervention, as well as make sure we've got lots of scaffold and stretch for our children, and helping them to ensure that they reach their full potential.
The main benefit, I would say, is getting the experience while you're working, rather than it all being college-based. You're put into a school, you're doing everything a normal TA would do, you're getting all the training.
I'm increasingly looking at how we can broaden our apprenticeship offer. We do a lot of work, like I mentioned, on teaching assistants. We do business administration, sports coaching. These are some of the apprenticeships we utilise in a big way.
I've been supported a lot through this programme by my school, who give me the time to do any assignments I need to do, who help me with my career as well and my personal development.
We've had some great successes and achievements made by our apprenticeships. A high percentage of our apprentices achieve a distinction, which is fantastic.
And again, just hearing from one of our partners, Oasis, about how they utilise their apprenticeship levy. And what I'm going to do now is pass you on to Sarah, who is going to give you a bit of an overview of Arke and how they utilise their strategy.
Hi everyone, so I'm Sarah. I head up operations staff development at Arke, with apprenticeships being an important strand of that. So as you can see there on the screen, we're a network of 39 schools based out of London, Birmingham, the South Coast and Hastings. In that time, since 2017, we've had over 400 apprentices. However, some of those are because we're also a provider. So we're our own provider of the level 6 teaching apprenticeship, which I know somebody asked about on the chat. But we use partners such as LMP for all our other apprenticeship provision at the moment. So it's really important to us, these kind of partnerships. As you can see there, about a quarter of our apprentices are we recruit in, and the rest are staff upskilling, which I think is a bit of an untapped resource actually in the sector, and we could be doing far more of that as well. Currently, we have just under 120 live learners, and they're across a broad range of programs, so level 2 right through to level 7 masters level programs. So in terms of how we've utilised apprenticeships across the trust, actually I would say we didn't have a really focused strategy on this until a couple of years ago. Like I say, our teacher provision has been made up a lot of those numbers up until a couple of years ago, where we started to really look at the issues that Jamie mentioned actually at the beginning of the webinar around, we know that there's that pot of money, the levy, and we wanted to make sure we were using that to have the best impact that we possibly could, because of course I don't need to tell anybody on this call about the budget challenges that the sector's facing at the moment. So it felt really important that we were utilising that funding well, and that it was strategically aligned with what we are trying to do as a network. The partnership with LMP has been really important over that previous 2 years, and what we've been able to do is really grow momentum. So about a third into this academic year now, we've already enrolled more school-based apprenticeships this academic year than we have in the whole academic years of any previous of the 5-year period. So it's really built momentum. So we started actually relatively small, but then it's grown quite quickly as other schools kind of learn about the positive impact that apprenticeships are having, and growing it from there. And it's really helped to attract new talent. And what we found is you open a much wider pool of candidates by putting out an apprenticeship advert. So a good example we've had recently is we put out an advert for a finance apprentice in one of our regions that had over 200 applications for that role. Apprenticeship adverts sit on the gov.uk apprenticeship finder site, which has a huge footfall, and it's free to advertise through that channel. So that's been really important for us in terms of diversifying and increasing our talent pools. Because I should say that apprentices are really popular options at the moment in the wider employment market, because of course there are persistent cost of living challenges, and the opportunity to earn while you learn seems to be really, really popular and really important to people at the moment. And it's really important for us that it's quality professional career development, and we've been thinking more and more about pathways, so not just using apprentices as kind of one-offs, but really thinking through how they can support a career pathway for our staff, and we're thinking more and more around that for operational and support staff in particular. And I think on the next slide I've got just a couple of screen grabs around something we developed internally in the last year, was having a toolkit available, because what we were finding is there's a lot of kind of myths out there about apprenticeships that aren't actually correct. So we just wanted one place that we could point to on our ArkNet, so our internal intranet, to have all the general information in one place. So people, busy ops leads, school business managers could just find all that information in one place. And then we've built out from there illustrative career pathways utilising apprenticeships. So in the kind of hover kind of area that I've got the red arrow on there, the person looking for that information can go straight to the page, and will take them straight to the apprenticeship provider's site with all the key information that they need about that programme. So trying to make the information as accessible as possible was really important to us, and I think again it's been part of building momentum and awareness about apprenticeships across the network.
Brilliant, amazing. Thank you very much, Sarah. And if anyone's got any questions for Sarah towards the end, we are going to move to the Q&A shortly. So please do put those on, all those questions, sorry, into the Q&A function. And Sarah will be coming back on shortly to answer some of those, but thank you very much for sharing those insights. Amazing. So before we do move to the Q&A then, what I'm going to do is just kind of give some top tips. Now, Sarah touched upon some of these points just now, but these kind of top tips are what we see a lot of multi-academy trusts doing, a lot of schools doing now, and they work really well when you are looking to build that apprenticeship strategy as well. So the first thing really is that identification of current and future skill gaps, and then building your career pathways around those with funded training programs linked. So some of the trusts that do this really well, they actually have these funded programs and pathways linked in with our apprenticeship programs as well, and some of them are actually bespoke to those individual trusts as well. Identify those support staff roles as well. And if you can, try and make them into an apprenticeship opportunity. You know, in terms of advertising for those roles, again, Sarah just mentioned that as well. By making it a apprenticeship, you get onto that government website, which really opens up that talent pool, and you can attract way more candidates in by making it into that apprenticeship program. And then understand the makeup of your workforce. Do they have the knowledge to excel in the role that they're in? We mentioned earlier about the fact that, you know, the SEND need in a lot of schools are going up. Are your staff equipped to deal with that? And if they're not, is there a program you can put in place to support them in that role? You know, are they, you know, is there a big group of staff that are aged 25 and under? Because if there is, you might be able to benefit from those NI savings by putting them onto that funded provision as well. And then work with a national provider with a track record of working with MATs in schools. There's lots of different providers out there. There's lots of providers that kind of specialize in that corporate space. But I really do recommend you work with one that really understands, you know, schools and multi-academy trusts and the training that you guys need within there as well. And then a really big piece on this is educating your leaders on how they can access that free recruitment or that apprenticeship training side of things as well, because a lot of people don't understand how to access it. So I think the easier you actually make that within your trust or school, the more success you're definitely going to have in there as well. So a few top tips from us there. I'm now going to hand back to Amber.
Thanks, Jamie. Jamie obviously talked a lot there about identifying skill gaps and, you know, creating career pathways. And a fantastic way that we do this at LMP is by using our recruitment team and our recruitment service. So within our offer, it's all included. We will advertise the role for you. We will shortlist candidates for you, check eligibility for the apprenticeship. And get a fantastic shortlist of candidates for you or your hiring managers to choose from to interview. These apprentices are fully prepped before interviews as well and go through various different workshops in order to make them ready for interview. And what you will find is that these are actually quite skilled people and that are not necessarily new to industry, but might be looking for a change in role. But ultimately, all of the courses that we offer, we can recruit for. So teaching assistants, business administrators, office assistants, etc. Finance assistants, if you're looking to introduce somebody new into your finance team at your head offices, early years educators, and we unfortunately no longer offer facility apprenticeships, but we do have a partner that we work with on that should you need or have the requirement for a facility service assistant. Our recruitment service is an assisted recruitment service. It has a fantastic obviously achievement rate when we're looking at putting apprentices into job roles, but it shouldn't be solely relied upon. But one of the things that you can do is work with us to obviously co-promote those roles, whether that's on your internal intranet system via social media, and it's about making these roles attractive to candidates so that they want to come and work within your trust and go on that pathway, as it's, for example, a TA apprentice that's going to start at a level 3 and hopefully stay on a journey with us through to their level 5. I'll pass back to Jamie.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Amber. And so we're now going to move to our Q&A with our panel. So please, if you do have any questions, I've got lots of questions that have been coming through that I've been writing down here, which I'm going to ask in a minute as well. And I know, Sarah, beforehand, we were talking, weren't we, about that snowball effect, which I think you also mentioned as well in terms of, the program and actually it's, you kind of start quite small, and then the more that people understand and know about it, the bigger and bigger it gets. So what advice would you give to a school or a MAP who's about to start on their apprenticeship journey?
Yeah, I think it's is there kind of really clear strategic alignment is really important. So I think the growth in send need will probably be, well identified by a lot of people on the call here. So for me, that's probably one where that would align very well with looking at potentially bringing in more send pathway TAs, and I know that's certainly something that we've seen particular growth in. You mentioned, Jamie and Amber, there are some financial incentives around this, and I know the latest budget has been particularly difficult in some aspects, so anything that can offset that, I know will probably speak well to school leadership, who will be really looking very closely at budgets this year, I'm sure. So it shouldn't be the motivator in my experience. It really does need to be about the professional development and what that can do for your staff as well, and how it can support your school outcomes. But the reality is, those kind of not having to pay national insurance contributions, employer national insurance contributions, that's particularly quite a large incentive to think about in terms of employment in the current climate.
Absolutely. And that's always been there, right? In terms of that NI savings for anyone on their apprenticeship under the age of 25.
Yeah.
So
I'm just not sure it's that well known about in the
exactly
sector, and so yeah, it's definitely something that if your schools aren't already aware of that, to make sure you are.
Absolutely. And then I guess the other big thing, isn't it, is it's about making sure senior leaders kind of understand the programs that are on offer and how to access those.
Yeah.
So from your experience, how did you get your senior leaders to buy into the apprenticeship program?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I did in the first few months of our strategy, as I said, we put together a kind of specific strategy around this, was really going out there, doing those kind of information briefings almost that you spoke about, to make sure, we did some myth busting, make sure people are aware, this is not just young people necessarily. I mean, our apprentices literally range from 17 to over 60. There's lots of opportunities there for second careerists or people returning to work. So, lots of kind of just informational briefings to principals and operations leads and whichever groups I could get time with, really. What's been particularly powerful then as our momentum start to grow is then to hear from people doing the apprentices and hearing the impact they're having both for them and for the school. So case studies have been really powerful for us, and we just did a session on Friday, which was a kind of all hands briefing across the network, and we had one of our librarian apprentices come on, and off the back of that, I've got several schools interested in exploring that option for upskilling for their staff. So that's a really powerful thing to think about, is hearing from the apprentices themselves.
Absolutely. I hear it quite a lot as well when people kind of they're in their job role, they've been in their role for sort of 2 or 3 years, they hear that word apprenticeship and think, oh, that's for young people. Yeah. That's not for me. So your kind of advice on that is to kind of case study your existing staff that are doing apprenticeships.
Yeah, absolutely. And just making sure everyone's aware that the opportunities are out there, for existing staff as well as for new hires. And we're seeing in these quite diverse pools when we go out for ad, that there's a wide cross section of lots of different diversity characteristics, and age being one of those. And I'll just actually back what you were saying about the recruitment service. That's been particularly valuable for our schools. We know how time poor HR and ops staff are in schools at the moment, so that support, being able to support with that recruitment, has been really valuable for our schools and the support that's offered there.
Amazing, amazing, really good to hear. And Amber, you mentioned a term called off-the-job training when you presented. Can you just explain to the audience how we log that off-the-job training here at LMP?
Yes, so all apprentices have access to an online e-portfolio system called Bud. So Bud is where the apprentices will upload their work. It will be passed on to the tutor to go through and mark, etc., give feedback. Not only does the apprentice have access to this, but the line manager does too. So everybody has full transparency over progress and things like that. So in terms of off-the-job training, this forms part of the working week. So for example, if you have one-to-ones with your apprentices, if you have group meetings, any time that is spent doing research, any time that is spent learning a new skill that they didn't know before that relates to the apprenticeship and job role, they can easily upload their hours via Bud, and the tutor will sign it off essentially. So there are lots of things like the teaching assistant development program, the ANSPEAR product. So when you have that individual accreditation, you can upload that via Bud, and that will count for around an hour of their off the job training. So I think it's probably one of the worst terms invented by the sector, because it's actually all done on the job, really. And a lot of the learning takes place within the working hours. But there are plenty of people here at LMP that can discuss that with anybody in detail, should they need to. We'll have a little QR code that you can scan and book a meeting in and find out lots more about that if you need to. But I think while I've got the mic, there has been a question come in about that specifically. So if I answer that one as well, Laura, thank you very much. Please can you explain what will happen in the practical period, and will it only involve off-the-job training? No, so in the practical period, this is the main bulk of the training. So day one, they've enrolled, they've had their induction session with their tutor. They'll then be on programme for example, 14 months before their endpoint assessment period. So every month they will meet with their tutor for around an hour to an hour and a half via Teams. Some courses will require observations, like the teaching assistant program. So the tutor will come out and do some observations on the job and look at what the teaching assistant is doing in classroom practically. But mainly done online via Teams. I think we found that our partners much prefer this, as opposed to kind of the old school going out to college once a week and having block release time. That doesn't happen anymore. So during those, they'll have milestones throughout the program that will focus on different things. So for example, within our SEND pathway, they'll look at codes of practice within SEND. So they will have to do various assignments and things like that and upload that to Bud, like we just mentioned. And they will obviously be marked, and then they will meet with their tutor again. So the practical period is the main kind of bulk of the course, where they do all of their learning, where they upload their assignments and get prepped for that endpoint assessment.
I was just going to mention, Amber, as well, that one of the ways of getting buy-in, but also thinking about off-the-job learning is, I think, Jamie, you mentioned some of the programs have a project as part of the endpoint assessment, and you know, that should be a real life project, you know, that you need or want to look at on behalf of your setting. So that can really help to, you know, do something, you know, that will improve your setting, and it also then just so happens to also be the assignment for that individual for their apprenticeship. So it really is about thinking about this hybrid of the work and training actually do come together to be one and the same thing if it's done well.
Absolutely, and that for me is really the heart of what an apprenticeship is. You know, it's improving the skills, knowledge, and behaviours of that individual. But you know what they're learning should also be improving your school or your mat as well, from the work they're doing. So yeah, absolutely, that project's a really good example. And Sarah, do you have much kickback when it comes to off-the-job training? Because I know Amber mentioned then, you know, people think of it as 1 day a week out at a college, 4 days a week at school, or with that employer. But from your experience, do you have much kickback at all?
I mean, it can be challenging in a school context. There's no getting away from that. What I often kind of advise is, if it's a new hire, it's, you know, thinking about that kind of contracted week. So an apprenticeship contract has to be at least 30 hours a week, also including the off-the-job hours as part of that. So you know, it's thinking through from the start, you know, what the classroom hours are, for instance, that you'll need a teaching assistant for, plus also building in off-the-job hours and release time. So if it's a hire, I think you can be kind of structured about it from the start. If it's for somebody that's already in the role and you're doing this as part of kind of upskilling or development, it's really, you know, having that early conversation between them and their line manager about how that would be built in a typical week. And I know there's not a typical week in a school, but, you know, having at least a kind of guiding commitment between the two of you in terms of, does that look like a couple of 2-hour blocks across the week? Does that look like you know, half an hour at the beginning of each day, you know, and working through what works best for the learner and for their particular role, because it's definitely not a one size fits all thing. It's having a conversation specific to their role and your setting.
Absolutely. You know, it's so important that you get that line manager buy-in as well, because that is a key part of that apprenticeship program, is making sure we get those reviews done each month, where actually the tutor would sit down with the line manager and the apprentice or the member of staff and actually then plan out that next month of work. So a really important point there. Amber, did you want to answer the question about the HLTA that just came in?
Yes, so we've had a question about the HLTA apprenticeship and saying, is it covered by the levy? Unfortunately, it's not. It's a commercial programme, and there is no funding available for this programme. So it would be at the cost of either the learner or the school. So ultimately, the cost of the programme is, I believe it's 695, is it? Plus VAT? Yeah. So that cost would have to be covered either way. You can split it with the school and the apprentice, or the apprentice can pay it directly. As long as that amount gets paid, it's absolutely fine. So yeah, the level 4 is a commercial programme. So I have a question for Sarah. And that question was, in terms of at LMP, we have an account management service. So what I wanted to kind of go through with you was, what does that look like in terms of as a trust, having information about where your learners are, whether they're on track, updates from us. What does that look like for you as a kind of strategic partner?
Yeah, we have an incredibly helpful person that does that with us. So we meet once a month, and I'll review all of our learners and where they are on like a traffic light system. And if somebody's maybe starting to fall behind, we'll have that discussion around why. You know, our client support person will have that detail from the tutor side of things. And then if for instance we need to have discussions with the line managers and that kind of thing, then I can go off and have that conversation. So yeah, it's really helpful from that point of view around having that kind of working together to resolve anything like that. Plus we're at the stage where if one of our schools inquired through our kind of internal inbox about an apprenticeship, if it's one of LMP's programs, then our client support person can speak direct to the school, kind of work out what the need is, and then support with the recruitment from there. So I can be quite hands off then, and you know, just kind of we've definitely built that trust so that that person can support the school directly with their hiring needs, and we've had fantastic feedback about that support as well. So it's been working really well.
Amazing. Perfect. Thank you.
Brilliant. So I think we've come towards the end of the session now. That went so quickly, actually. Sarah, is there anything else you wanted to add before we close?
I don't think so. I was just double checking that no more questions coming in. No, nothing from my side. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for your time. And a massive thank you to everybody that joined today. I did mention at the very start as well, this is the first of our webinar series this week as part of National Apprenticeship Week. So we do have 5 more sessions happening. So if you do want to join any of those, you can just scan the QR code that's on the screen now, and it will take you to our website, where actually all recordings will go onto that website as well, so you can watch them back or you can register for a future event as well. But thank you so much for your time. If you do want to catch up with a member of the LMP team, again, there's another QR code on the screen right now, and we'd be really happy to book in a discovery call with you. But apart from that, thank you very much, and we look forward to supporting you all very soon. Thank you.